It is a cliche among students of English departments to say that the poetry of John Keats is remarkable for its sensuousness. But if you ask them to elaborate, very frequently they start fumbling. Today, we shall discuss briefly the element of sensuousness in the poetry of John Keats. We shall begin with the concept of sensuousness, or even before that, we shall speak about the senses. What are the senses? The five senses: seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, and tasting. In Sanskrit, they are known as the Pancha Indriyas, the five senses. The five sense organs are eyes, ears, body, nose, and tongue. What is the meaning of the word sensuous? It means affecting the senses rather than the intellect, the mind, or the soul. Sensuousness is that which impacts the senses, that which affects the senses, rather than the intellect, the mind, or the soul. In his personal life, John Keats was fascinated by the senses. You have in his letter to his friend Benjamin Bailey, dated November the 22nd, 1817, the famous exclamation, "Oh, for a life of sensations rather than of thoughts." Let me repeat it. Oh, for a life of sensations rather than of thoughts. As Keats saw it, sensations are pleasurable, exhilarating, joyous, while thoughts are troublesome, confusing, painful. In the same letter, John Keats goes on to praise those who delight in sensation rather than hunger after truth. Keats believes that lives can be driven by the desire to delight, to take delight in sensation, or driven by the desire to attain truth. Keats personally felt that it is better to take delight in sensation rather than pursue relentlessly truth. Under these circumstances, it is quite understandable that the poetry of John Keats should display an amazing sensuousness. We shall begin with the sense of seeing. John Keats had an amazing ability to create word pictures which are detailed, which are vivid, and the sensitive reader, while reading those lines, while reading those words, is able to see actually the picture created by the poet. He does not read the lines, he does not read the words. Instead, he sees the picture. A good exemplification of this is the closure of the fourth stanza of The Eve of Syntagnus, where the poet describes the carved angels on the wall. The carved angels, meticulously carved, beautifully carved, have their hair blown back and their wings put crosswise on their breasts. The sensitive reader is able to see the angels carved on the walls. Another example from the same poem, from the Eve of St. Agnes, is the stanza describing the casement, beginning with a line, and beginning with a line, a casement high and triple arched there was. The description is detailed, the description is graphic, and the sensitive reader is able to see the casement right in front of him. We now move to the sense of hearing. Ode to a Nightingale. The entire poem Ode to a Nightingale of John Keats is a tribute to the sense of hearing. When we read the poem carefully, we hear the song of the nightingale. We also hear the voice of the poet. Next comes the sense of touching. We can find an example again in the Eve of St. Agnes. There is the undressing stanza, beginning with the line, "Anon his heart revives her vespers done." Madeline is removing her jewels, her clothes, one by one. And of Madeline removing her jewels, this is what the poet says: unclasps her warmed jewels one by one. Unclasps her warmed jewels one by one. A lesser poet would have said bright jewels, sparkling jewels, or golden jewels, or diamond jewels. But what does Keats say? Unclasps her warm jewels one by one. It is the height of winter, and the jewels are warm because they have been touching the body of beautiful Madeline for hours. Warmed jewels is an excellent exemplification of John Keats paying tribute to the sense of touching. The penultimate sense we shall consider is the sense of smelling. A fine example of this is found in Ode to a Nightingale. In the fifth stanza of Ode to a Nightingale, to be more exact, the stanza beginning with the line, "I cannot see what flowers are at my feet." The poet is unable to see what flowers are at his feet, but he is able to smell the incense hanging upon the boughs. The poet says the entire darkness is embalmed, and he is able to smell a fusion of smells, a fusion of sweet smells, and he tries to guess what flowers are around him, what is the vegetation around him. We finally come to the sense of tasting. The second stanza of Ode to a Nightingale provides a handy example. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of the true, the blushful hypocrite. It has already been pointed out that in his letter to his friend Benjamin Bailey, dated November the 22nd, 1817, John Keats lavishes praise on those who delight in sensation rather than those who hunger after truth. Without any exaggeration, it can be said that these seemingly opposed drives unite in the life and literature of John Keats. John Keats took an intense delight in sensation, but that was also an expression of his hunger after truth. The sensuousness of John Keats is that which is used by him to experience life to the fullest, to understand the world to the fullest, and further to go beyond life and to go beyond the world. The sensuousness of John Keats is a mystical sensuousness through which The poet experiences life to its very extreme and then goes beyond life, experiences the world to its very extreme and then goes beyond the world in search of the ultimate, in search of the infinite, in search of the divine. It would be quite accurate to call John Keats the mystic of the senses. Indian philosophy believes that there are numerous ways for man to reach the ultimate truth. The path of the senses was the path chosen by John Keats for the purpose. Sensuousness for John Keats was something mystical, something magical, something mysterious. And it was this sensuousness that made John Keats the great poet he is.